Hi class, I just want to get started and give you a little bit of additional information on Chapter 3. Chapter 3, you've read through different systematic approaches to organizational behaviors and how organizations are set up. There's a few theories that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into. Wanted to start off with stakeholder theory. This is near and dear to me because with the onset of ETSU football, the new football program, which we're now a couple of years into, or in our second season currently, our sport management department has been conducting research, action research, and you'll learn more about that in your research course. The reason I'm telling you about this is because we're using this stakeholder theory as a reason to drive this research. We're reaching out to those stakeholders. And before I jump the gun, I guess let's look down at this sheet. In an organization's environment includes a variety of people slash stakeholders. You know, who are these stakeholders? So if we're talking about ETSU football, the stakeholders now are the players, the coaches, the athletic department, faculty, staff, students, people within the community. Now there are different levels of stakeholders, and we'll get into that in a minute. But these stakeholders are a vital piece of the puzzle to the success of this organization, or in this case, the ETSU football program. And so we are actually going out and surveying these stakeholders and seeking their perceptions, their experiences, what they'd like to see, their needs, wants, and desires. Goes back to marketing. It's actually under the umbrella of marketing research. But we're tapping into those stakeholders to see what their needs are so that then we can meet the needs, or we, the marketing department, meet the needs of the stakeholders. And again, there's a variety of different levels of stakeholders and their impact on the organization. So you have your voluntary stakeholders versus your involuntary stakeholders. An example here a great example is a professional sport moving, and I think your book uses this illustration, a professional sport moving to a new city. Well, whether they like it or not, the athletes, the coaches, the organization as a whole is moving. Well, they're voluntarily involved with that franchise. So they are voluntary stakeholders. The involuntary stakeholders in this example would be maybe the community, the city, the citizens within that community that may or may not want this professional team to come, invade their space. So they are the involuntary stakeholders in this instance. They don't have a choice. They're involved whether they want to be or not. And they have a voice. And so it's important as a manager to understand that part of your organization and who those stakeholders are and how to meet the needs of all of the stakeholders. Moving on down, you have the primary versus secondary stakeholders. And this is pretty self-explanatory. Your primary stakeholders are going to be those that are directly impacted and involved with your organization. All right, if you're an athletic department, that's going to be your athletes and your coaches, the management team, the marketing team. Those are your primary stakeholders. Secondary stakeholders have less of an impact, still have an impact and still have their place within the organization, but don't have a direct impact with the organization. Now, I want you to read an article that I'm going to post about secondary stakeholders that speaks to the importance of secondary stakeholders and how marketers shouldn't overlook them, seek their expectations and what their needs are, because most often they are most vocal within the community, and so you want that positive public relations out about your product. Third, you have your demand side versus your supply side. Here you're speaking to more than non-profit or not-for-profit organizations such as your fitness facilities, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, things of that nature. The demand side, these are your consumers. They're the ones that are consuming the product that you're providing. Versus the supply side of stakeholders, these are your volunteer coaches, your volunteer referees. They're the ones that are kind of making it happen. You have to have them, so therefore you need to keep them happy. And again, from an organizational, systematic standpoint, the stakeholder theory, time and time again, it has shown true to know it, to understand who those stakeholders are, and then how do you manage these groups. And you can read throughout your chapter in more detail on how to manage these groups and which groups for your specific organization are more important for you to focus on. Now, I want you to look at institutional theory. I have posted a PDF file on institutional theory. I want you to read more about institutional isomorphism. And this is where similar organizations look the same from a systematic approach. Kind of the idea of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you see that a lot, like within athletic departments, professional franchises as well. And so I want you to read up more on this. The article that I posted, I want you to specifically focus on pages 17 through 23. And then in your book, you can read more about resource-dependent theory. Here's where your organization is dependent upon resources. Without these resources, the organization's success would be impacted. A couple examples you see here: broadcast networks and collegiate athletics. You look at the money involved there, and there's a direct impact whenever it comes to that resource. The collective bargaining agreements in particularly the NBA, and the athlete is an important resource when it comes to the NBA being a successful organization. So I want you to read more on that and make sure you understand the ins and outs of these three theories.